Please remember, all planets in Eggman's incredible interstellar amusement park are, as far as you know, wholly owned properties of Eggman Enterprises and its subsidiaries. All unauthorized photography, video reproduction, or shutting down of generators is strictly prohibited. Thank you.
Eggman, I am going to save this planet, and I am going to free these aliens. No copyright law in the universe is going to stop me!
Disclaimer, these are just my opinions, you're entitled to your opinions, both of our opinions are completely subjective. I will make statements like I make the canon, but I don't really mean that. It don't matter, because at the end of the day, these are just my opinions. I will be specifically referencing Sonic property that I have experience in, or I will be referencing other Sonic properties that I've heard other people express their opinions in. We're gonna add this in here immediately. This is just something I got off the internet. I mean, like, you know, I think it's funny. I am gonna try to change it in a more meaningful way than just, like, you know, taking this image. I have done that before, and, like, you know, I just put, like, a title on it. And I don't know. Sometimes that doesn't feel right to me. I also don't want to just, like, change the colors. I might, like, just take Tails and Sonic out, but I'm also gonna, like, put them back in, and I'm gonna actually do some things with Tails. So, it's Sonic's 30th anniversary, and essentially what that translates to me is that while Sonic will turn 30 somewhere around June, I will turn 30 somewhere around December. Fuck my life. While this does not make the entire Sonic fanbase, there seems to be a plethora of Sonic fans echoing the idea that Sonic Adventure 2 was more or less like the last really good Sonic game out there, and then there was a trend of really shitty Sonic games, and there was some good gems here and there, but most of the time, getting a new Sonic game now is actually a bit of a risk, and let me emphasize on that. Time truly does fly when you can remember a very shitty video game that you purchased in 2008, more so than a particular economic recession that took place in 2008. I know that by making this statement, I'm just gonna sound like a spoiled brat, but in the context of what kind of person I was in 2008, but can you imagine me going into Blockbuster with a gift card that I had just received from my grandmother? By the way, bless her fucking heart. Rest in peace, Grandma. You are a powerful fucking soul. The gift card has $100 on it, so that means I can either buy one really big thing or a bunch of really small things. Now, the general direction the wind blows, per se, is that when corporations and companies like Sega and Nintendo and Sony, they release new games, they price it at around $60, unless they add other things like new content, or whatever they decide to bundle the game with, like merchandise or DLC. So I look on the shelf and what I see is this fucking game. It's a brand new Sonic game, and I had already heard about some of the suspicion and testimonies against the previous entries such as Sonic 06 and Sonic and the Secret Ring, and I didn't really play those games because I didn't have the money to get a 360. In fact, at the time, I had sold my GameCube and all of the games that I had on the GameCube in order to get a guitar amplifier. I was only able to play this game because my stepfather had a Wii, and a lot of shitty games attached to the Wii. By the way, I know some of y'all stand with the Wii. I don't stand with the Wii. The Wii was a mistake. Even if it was really well selling, I don't care. So I have to make a decision, and I actually remember feeling that moment when I had to make the decision as to whether or not I should buy this game, because this game was more than half of the gift card that my grandmother got me. So, you know, it's December 26, 2008, and for some odd fucking reason, I stuck with my nostalgia, and I ended up regretting the purchase. Holy shit, I hate this game so much. I spent so much time playing this game because I had purchased this game. I purchased this game. I was stuck with this game. I mean, no one's gonna want to reimburse the $60 I put into this game that I will never get back again. I mean, for fuck's sake, what? Now, to the game's credit, there's a lot of good things about it, such as the soundtrack, which, let's be honest here, for the most part, Sonic games have been consistent with a good soundtrack, but this one wasn't done by Crush 40, it was done by Bowling Pursuit, which is pretty good, it was a good change, but the fucking werehog. Who the absolute fuck came up with this shit? I mean, I'm absolutely offended by this. Dare I say even triggered a bit, because this character is qualitatively, in terms of game mechanics, very comparable to Knuckles. I wouldn't say a one-on-one copy or anything, but you know, the melee is pretty similar to how Knuckles does his melee. And it's just like, Knuckles as a character, though not my favorite character, is so underdeveloped, and it's criminal how underdeveloped Knuckles is. As far as I'm aware, Knuckles is the guardian of the Master Emerald, and there's not a whole lot that is said about this. However, they do hint that there is a larger, more grand backstory to this, and I'm gonna say right now, how they handle this specific part of Knuckles is so slipshod. Some people will say to just read the comics, because the comics are where most of the backstory in the Sonic universe is. And don't get me wrong, like, I've read a good chunk of the comics. This specific volume you're looking at right here is the first comic I've ever purchased in the Burbank Mall in a store that is no longer there, called Dice. But do you realize that these fucking comics are just as inconsistent with each other as the video games are? And that's where I have the primary problem. It's not even just that there's a whole array of Sonic timelines that conflict with each other in the video game world, but also in the comic world as well. Based on what I've read from these comics, and again, I have not read all of these comics, but I've read a good chunk of them, these comics are just there to sell the games, and the merchandise that are attached to the game. And it could not be more blatant than within the Sonic Central live stream of 2021. So first I'm gonna crop both of them out, and it looks like both of them are a single, I mean, obviously they're not a single thing, but in terms of the layer, it would be more efficient if we just did, you know, individual, an individual one. We can probably edit them in terms of coloring and stuff at the same time. I think it would be ideal if we also got the shadow. I've never done something like that before, but it actually kind of makes sense. Once I finish doing this whole thumbnail, you're gonna have so much fun, with wholesome Sonic content, discuss Sonic in a way that we can just, not fucking yell at each other all the time and be all yeah, well, you know, your consequences have actions, or something. Wait, I don't remember.
Cause you frickin' fricks just can't ever be quenched. Your fantasies can't ever be quenched, can they? You frickin' fricks! What will you learn? What will you learn? That your actions have consequences!
Oh, that's kind of trippy, actually. Just hold on, wait. I'm probably gonna blow my mind right now. Hold on. Holy shit, that's fucking weird. Yo, I didn't even think of doing this. Hold on, holy shit. Yo, that's fucking wild. Wait, where are we? Hold on. Oh my god, wait. I'm so confused. What is happening? What layer am I on? Am I on this one? Hold on. Is it this one? No, is it this one? It's gotta be this one. I am so fucking confused. Oh, you know what? Okay, I know why. It's because of this layer right here. Yep, we did not cut this version of Tails out. We simply just we simply copied him. We didn't cut him out. In fact, this one is the top layer, technically speaking. But it's wow, we just did a mathematical equation in photo editing. Holy shit. This is Tails supremacy. You know what? I'll just fuck that. No. Oh my god, no. I think it's time. To say goodbye. Let's just say it's time to say goodbye. It's time to say goodbye. Do we have Comic Sans? Yeah, we got Comic Sans. An ode to the fans. It's time to say goodbye. An ode to the fans. In order for me to properly discuss my emotions and feelings about the Sonic Central live stream of 2021,
but fans don't don't care about your feelings.
We need to preface my entire relationship with Sonic the Hedgehog in the first place. At a super young age, when my family was relatively poor and lived in Montrose, California, my cousin came over and brought these toys that he got from Burger King. More specifically, he had the Dr. Robotnik and Knuckles toys. I'll be honest, I didn't really think much of them back then, but then I saw The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog on Toon Disney, Channel 54. I vividly remember that detail, because 54, as a result, became a favorite number of mine.
Only in Toon Disney will you find the amazing quick change artist, Sonic the Hedgehog, Toon Disney's fastest Toon hero.
I even hold the speed record for running backwards.
Toon Disney's master of Toon disguise.
Way cool!
And Toon Disney's man of 1,000 faces.
Okay, dokie.
In fact, you might even say he's the drag racer of Toon Disney.
You got it, Ace. Let's race.
Toon Disney's Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, every afternoon at 2/1 Central on Toon Disney.
I did go back and rewatch some of these episodes, and I will say that these are quite entertaining episodes. I'll definitely say that if you did not watch this show as a kid, then it will not be entertaining today. I really liked how expressive Sonic was. Sonic was a much more punk rock looking Mickey Mouse than anything else. However, that is the general direction that the creators of Sonic the Hedgehog, including Yuji Naka, envisioned Sonic's character to be portrayed as in the first place. So definitely, to give credit where credit is due, Sonic the Hedgehog, as a response to the very popular Super Mario series at the time, Sonic the Hedgehog as a character was extremely reflective of the general attitude that took place at the time. However, it does not mean that Sonic himself is punk rock. When I was just born, and when Sonic the Hedgehog was becoming prevalent for the first time, the Cold War, specifically the nuclear military conflict between the United States and the USSR that lasted for several decades, had just ended. The economic trend of the capitalist free market has been trending towards and eventually led up to what is now called a neoliberal economic system. If you're a regular on my channel, you can probably already guess where I'm going with this, but if you are new to the channel, please just bear with me on this. I had already done a video on this topic alone, so I won't harp too much on what I have already covered. But to cover my bases, punk rock was a counterculture that sprung from several other countercultures as a rejection to what was mainstream. However, over time, punk has become more safe for corporate consumption. This is largely accredited to the extreme far-right censorship and violence committed by the PMRC and other religious rights organizations. If you're already super fucking bored because of what I am discussing, then you should be. The religious right wing is a super boring, super mayonnaise, super fucking nonsensical, and ultimately extremely harmful realm of US politics. And as a result of so much fucking censorship and so much palatability to a capitalist system that thrives on competition, then yeah, of course the corporations are going to co-opt the punk aesthetic for corporate consumption. Of course, absolutely. Even the punk outlook of rejecting the mainstream itself has become mainstream. Because as long as you're not questioning the status quo within the realms of corporate consumption, then you really don't have anything to worry about as long as you're the corporations who own these bands in the first place. Because you see, within the neoliberal economic framework that is the free market, you can commodify anything, and I mean anything. To quote Gil Scott-Heron, "The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox on 4 without commercial interruption. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Adams, and Spiro Agnew. To eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary, the revolution will not be televised." So is Sonic the Hedgehog punk rock? I don't fucking know. It depends on who you fucking ask. Sonic the Hedgehog, while he has a lot of attitude and spunk to his character, was supposed to be this punk rock mascot rivaling the Super Mario Bros. Franchise. And believe me, that was a very financial decision on Sega and Sonic Team's part. People will often mistake this use of discourse around Sonic's punk credibility on the assumption that Sonic is for kids as he is targeted toward kids media. However, Sonic the Hedgehog is definitely an example of punk rock being co-opted for the corporate interest for corporate consumption. So is Sonic the Hedgehog punk rock? Well, I'm gonna be honest with you, I would much rather you come to your own conclusion on this subject. However, you can't deny that Sonic the Hedgehog, as an icon, is a de facto example of the punk rock counterculture being co-opted for corporate interest.
Go. Alright, so we're gonna count this down real quick, you know what I'm saying? We're gonna go from 3, and when I say go, we're gonna go. So 3, 2, 1, go! Yeah! Run on! Alright, so
No disrespect intended to anyone who enjoys the game Sonic the Hedgehog 1 on the Sega Genesis, but I really don't like this game, and I think Green Hill Zone specifically personifies exactly how I feel about this game. While at the time it was pretty innovative for being a super fast-paced way of playing Mario World 1.1, the level Green Hill Zone has been recycled so many times that I absolutely can't stand whenever I see a new rendition of it. And believe me, we'll talk more about this later, but right now I'd like to put a pin on this subject. Unless you glitch this game is painfully slow, and honestly, some of the worst level designs are from this game alone. For a game that emphasizes on going fast on a console that advertises itself on blast processing, whatever the fuck that is.
The Sega Genesis has blast processing. Super Nintendo doesn't. So what's blast processing do? What if you don't have blast processing?
This game, as a contradiction, is super slow. For example, Labyrinth Zone, a level that is widely known for being a super difficult level that is underwater most of the time. This level chugs so much in the frame rates because of the fact that it is centered around going slow. Some people have argued that this is a level that tests your efficiency in gameplay. However, this concept is handled so much better in Sonic 3 and Knuckles in the level Hydrocity Zone. Notice how Sonic is going continuously fast, maintaining his momentum because of the level design and the reward that goes behind using the level design, all while keeping in mind the efficiency in the gameplay. Now take a look at how slow, however fucking slow, this rather impressive speedrunner is going, even with the speedrun techniques that he has in place. Imagine not having as much experience as he does, and then playing this game the way it is for the first time when you're a child like me when I was 6 years old playing this game. You would want something like a speed dash in this game, but we don't get that until Sonic 2. By the way, let's talk about that one. It's undeniable that this game's success was in large part due to the advertising for this game, but that doesn't mean this game isn't good. This game is fantastic. People can rightfully argue that Sonic 1 was just a test to see how much the Sega Genesis could handle at the time, and that's a fair assumption considering that Sonic 2 is just way faster. This was one of the first video games to implement alternative pathways to get to the finish line, and I think that's important to note because this game is extremely creative on its own right. Even the water stage Aquatic Ruins is so inoffensive because going into the water is rather a consequence for poor gameplay. The level doesn't really hold your hand all that much, but it does make a very clear distinction that if you play a certain way and make certain decisions while you play on really fast timing, then not only will you have a better time playing the game, but your score will improve. To give you a very broad perspective of why this game is so important, at least to me, this is not only the first Sonic game I ever played, this is the first video game I've ever played in my entire life. I played this at the young age of 5 years old. Come on, it's gotta be the last hit, come on.
Yes! 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 Oh my god, yes! I'm sorry for yelling, oh my god, but yes! 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 Oh my god! Oh my god! Yes! Yes!
While I am praising this game for how good it is, this game is incredibly difficult and sometimes even unfair. You guys know what I'm talking about. The fucking pit. The pit. You know, this one. Where you can't get out even when you're in your ultimate form Super Sonic. Not like tails can be useful and fly us out of there or anything. I mean, that is an idea that they implemented in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. I wonder why I keep referencing that one. But no, this already really difficult level Mystic Cave has transcended into unfair primarily because this pit, if it wasn't for the fact that this is a beginner's trap. And believe me, the developers knew. That pit was supposed to be a secret entrance to a level called Hidden Palace Zone, which would have perfectly fit the theme of branching pathways. Because truth be told, despite the fact that this game came out a year later after Sonic the Hedgehog 1, the development team was split into two, one in the United States and one in Japan. The Japanese one was focusing more on Sonic CD. Interestingly, I'm pretty amused that Sega's development team in the United States was called Sexually Transmitted Infection. Sega Technical Institute. Sonic CD was the flagship release and the best-selling game on the Sega CD. If you're considering buying a Sega CD so you can play this game, I highly would recommend against it. First of all, not only was this game re-released on the GameCube, the PlayStation 2, and the PC, but you can buy an even better version made by an indie developer named Christian Whitehead. We'll talk more about Christian Whitehead later on, by the way. As far as I'm aware, this was the first Sonic game that not only had an interactive story mode, not only had branching pathways that gave you a different result in how you ended the game, which was very impressive in its own right, but it was also the first game to have fully animated cutscenes. This is also the very first Sonic game to implement the element of time travel, which is also a very impressive feat because if you play it a certain way and you time travel a certain way throughout the game, you get a very different result as of playing this game. But even with such an impressive and ambitious magnitude that this game holds, this game only sold roughly 1 million copies. And trust me, I did not grow up with this game, as opposed to Sonic 2. And that's primarily because this game was released on the Sega CD. The Sega CD was a commercial fucking failure by every stretch of the word. Because in its truest form, it is not a console, it is an add-on to the Sega Genesis. At least one of them. This user-unfriendly contraption, along with its user-unfriendly setup, was a response to the release of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. This rather hot, unsexy mess was supposed to be this big thing that hosted a 12.5 MHz processor and 64 simultaneous colors. Holy shit! I don't give a fuck! And why would I? This is an overglorified excuse for a console. Even Nintendo and Sony, at one point in history, were attempting to work together to create something similar to this. And we all know what that turned into, the creation of the Philips CDI, the PlayStation 1, and Nintendo is still using cartridges at this time. But whatever, we're not here to diss on Nintendo, nor are we here to praise Nintendo. Back to referencing the Sega CD, there really is no reason to buy the Sega CD, because unless you're playing a game like Lunar the Silver Star, or some really obscure Japanese games that were attached to the Sega CD, there's really no reason to invest in it. Seriously, you're not gonna find 1990s anime titties like these anywhere else.
I guarantee it.
Random side note, did you know that they also came out with this bullshit? You know, another add-on for the Sega Genesis. And this particular add-on could not function without the Sega CD. And you'd think that would be weird enough, but no, it gets way weirder than that. Because not only was this really user-unfriendly, even more so than the Sega CD itself, but that certain games really required you to also own a Sega CD, and a CD to go in the Sega CD as well as a cartridge. Talk about so fucking inefficient, like are you... what? I suppose that all of you watching are expecting me to say that this is the greatest game that came out of the Sega Genesis during this time. In my opinion, Sonic 2 holds that spot. But that doesn't mean that Sonic 3 didn't do anything that Sonic 2 didn't. In fact, there's a lot that Sonic 3 did that greatly improved on Sonic 2. For one, there were 3 different shields that Sonic himself could utilize, and if you were playing as Sonic while using these shields, Sonic himself could use these shields for special abilities that no other character can use. This came with its own set of advantages and disadvantages throughout the game and level design itself. Along with being the debut of Knuckles the Echidna, this is not only the first Sonic game where you could play single-player campaigns with all 3 characters, but you can also literally just save your game on a Sega Genesis cartridge, which was largely unheard of at the time. Michael Jackson allegedly, though uncredited, played a crucial role in the development of the soundtrack. Also, I really like the... What the fuck is this? So do you remember those Sonic toys I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the video? Well, apparently this is what happened as a result of it. Allegedly speaking, Sega had a licensing deal with Burger King and it was about to expire during the production of Sonic 3, so they had to divide the game in half, release Sonic 3 early with half of the levels, and then they released Sonic and Knuckles after the fact in order to have double the game, double the power, double the memory, double the use of materials. For a very long time, this was considered the best Sonic game ever created, and even to this very day, a lot of people would contend to that notion. Though some of those same people went back on their stance on the matter and decided to claim Sonic Mania as the crown winner of the best game ever created with the Sonic franchise. That's fine, you're entitled to that opinion. I don't think either one of them is the greatest game ever made. You want to know what my favorite Sonic game ever is? Well, we'll get to that in a second. But right now we need to talk about the Sega Saturn, which took place after the release of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. I don't have a whole lot of experience with the Sega Saturn. That doesn't mean the Sega Saturn itself wasn't impressive in its own feat. This was the first console where you could add expansion packs to increase the RAM or the memory unit of the Saturn itself, although some games required that in order to run properly. This also meant in some cases you could play Japanese games on a Western Sega Saturn. The big thing to take away from all of this is not necessarily whether or not the Sega Saturn had good games, but whether or not the Sega Saturn did well financially. And there's a lot of speculation on how that exactly happened, considering that the Sega Saturn was short-lived, yet had very high-quality games. One hotly contested talking point that people tend to gravitate towards is the notion that Sega kept releasing new add-ons to the Sega Genesis as if they were consoles releasing with brand new games attached to those consoles add-on thingies. And as a result, Sega has lost its interest and fan base primarily due to their inconsistency and distrust towards the brand. Makes a lot of sense to me. But then there's Sony.
I'm going to ask Sony Computer Entertainment President of America, Steve Reyes, to join me for a brief presentation. $2.99.
If anyone wants to claim their homies at Sony, well, let's take a look at some of these prices. We're looking at like $1,200. We're looking at $700. We're looking at fucking $1,700, $1,200, $550, $549. You know, this is way more than fucking $299. Not to mention, you know, adjusted for inflation. I think the biggest problem with the Sega Saturn is its exclusion of major Sonic titles. I mean, yeah, you can call these Sonic games, but they're not legitimate titles. They're not titles that forward the story in any way. One of them is an on-foot racing game, albeit with really good music. This one's a slightly better rendition of an honestly really shitty Sega Genesis game. And this one is an honestly less impressive version of Sonic Mega Collection on the GameCube. Despite all this, that doesn't mean that Sega didn't try to make a game that was a mainline Sonic franchise game, because this specific footage you're looking at right here would be a prototype for a future Sonic game. I'm really trying hard not to spoil anything here. They tried to make this fucking game called Sonic Extreme for the Sega Saturn, and it failed so poorly because of mismanagement. Once again, which seems to be a theme around here. Because not only would the cancellation of this game be the detriment of the Sega Saturn, but also it would be a consistent trend for the future. This way, right? 1,000? Okay, now we're getting there. Now I'm gonna like work with the general colors here. So, what I'm gonna attempt to do, this is a little bit of a risk. You can't reverse this, but it's just like, depends on how deep you go, you know? I'm gonna put a contrast on this. Big old contrast. Not that deep. I always try to go for like a little bit of detail. I actually would like to do the contrast for this one first. Maybe darken it a little bit. This actually gives it a little bit more depth. I just did the back layer, and I can even do this layer too, right here. We can actually even mess with the colors of these. Hue and saturation, okay. So I'll put this over here. Saturation. We do want them all very saturated because these are exaggerated colors here. Maybe even darker still. We can have red tails, pink tails. That's an interesting color combination of both Tails and Sonic. Now we can work on this one. We want hue to be different as well. We can go purple. Green. I like exaggerated colors. I want the lightness to be dark. Not too dark. You want it to be consistent. That's pretty interesting right there. Now we can really mess with this. Now what we can do instead of just like meshing them all together actually is we can like merge the ones that are involving Tails and the backdrop together, because now we're gonna edit those as a whole. We can't go back once we start making, edits to that stuff, but I'm pretty good with this whole thing being, unified. I think we want this one to be gone, so we're going to have to delete this one. Contrast this up a bit, so that way, like, we got a more reliable looking, contrast between the backdrop and the foreground. We can decide how dark this can be. So anyway, there you go. Gaussian blur helps really, bring out the title if you need it to be. And sometimes if you want the Gaussian blur to have something like that, what you can do for the title, you can also make a duplicate layer. Alright, move this up a bit. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. It pops out and it also looks a bit spooky. Sometimes contrast will change the color depending on what you use. Sometimes it'll make the color brighter or darker. Yeah, there you go. Yes. Look what we can do here. We can also just keep doing that. And we can now experiment with red. We have the opportunity to go to red. Look at that. Look at that. A fucking masterpiece. That is my latest creation. I call it... what do I call it? I call it, it's time to kill the dog. Oh, shit. I just completely forgot something. Sorry, bitch, I'm not playing this whole fucking intro. Hold the fucking phone. What is going on here? This is not the Sonic that I grew up with at all. Yet, somehow, I fucking love it. If Sonic the Hedgehog was ever gonna succeed at looking or even remotely appearing punk rock, this is the video game to demonstrate that capability. There are so many things about this game that I love so much, and I will go as far as to say this is my all-time favorite game. I cannot properly discuss every single reason why I love this game from the bottom of my heart in this video in any meaningful or effective way. Instead, I'm going to talk about the impact that this game had on not just Sega, but also the entire Sonic fanbase as a whole. Before making this title, Sega has never officially focused on making a cohesive world to be built in the world of Sonic the Hedgehog, but that's what this is for. This was meant to be that game. Many people tend to landmark this game as Sega's answer to the leap to 3D, but the answer is, this is Sega's first attempt to actually build an actual world for Sonic the Hedgehog. While this game sold extremely well, being the best-selling game on the Sega Dreamcast, this game did not age very well at all. However, that right there is part of the charm. This game doesn't kid around with shitty voice deliveries.
Huh? What? Tails? Watch out! You're gonna crash! Ah!
The fuck? Glitches and terrible line deliveries aside, this game is fucking amazing. This is my video, Jimmy Wetzel.
I don't know you!
I'm not fucking around, everyone. On one Friday afternoon in 1999, I was in the Burbank Toys R Us and I saw a bunch of kids gathering around a monitor only to see a Dreamcast do this shit. What the fuck, guys? That's a fucking whale, just like going after my man Sonic. What the fuck, y'all? Not to fucking mention Sonic and Tails actually having a conversation. Like, do you not know what kind of fucking blessing God has graced upon us all? you not understand?
This thing's got unlimited power, you know.
Not to mention that Sonic now has an entire world to explore. Like, this is a big fucking deal. Also, do you notice anything about the music at all? Maybe you're noticing some different instruments. Maybe there's some vocals in there. Maybe there's some actual fucking songs in there. Listen, everyone, I'm not trying to downplay the success and the greatness of the previous Sonic games, but look at this shit. Like, oh my fucking god, it's so beautiful. It's so wonderful. And clearly very ambitious for its time, despite its flaws today. I know Jimmy Wetzel really wants me to shit on this game because of how bad the glitches are, but you know what? We're celebrating Sonic's 30th anniversary, and this is how I'm gonna do it, because this is my relationship with Sonic the Hedgehog, and honestly, my whole relationship with Sonic the Hedgehog can be summarized with this game alone. I mean, look at this sexy-ass money shot of the cannon just like fucking shooting Sonic's balls off. Like, wow. You kids these days are so fucking privileged. Multiple characters? You got it, baby. Epic and meaningful backstories to Sonic characters? Yo, sign me up, girl. I want to be part of that. Big-ass fucking boss fights? I mean, okay, this is not Shadow of the Colossus, but yo, look, they released the entirety of Sonic Lost World 14 years before the game was released on the Wii U. So ahead of its time. Anyone want some chow? Alright, I'm just gonna leave this right here. We're gonna talk about the plot, and if we don't, then this entire fucking thing is meaningless. Look, everyone, if you hate Big the Cat, just press down on your joystick, you'll get it eventually. So this story is about Dr. Robotnik resurrecting a water monster from the Master Emerald, and Knuckles has to go around, you know, finding the pieces of the Master Emerald, because that's how the Master Emerald was broken, and thus Sonic needs to find the Chaos Emeralds before Dr. Robotnik. Dr. Robotnik wants to destroy all of Station Square and build Eggman Land or Robotnik Land because he's some imperialistic sick fuck. Also, spoiler, neither of them find all the Chaos Emeralds. Rather, this water monster you're looking at finds the Chaos Emeralds instead and then becomes this fucking thing. This game is really not all that ambitious, it's just fucking wild. Here's the big gripe with this game. Even though this is my most favorite Sonic game ever, there's a fundamental flaw with this game. This game not only attempts to build its own world, but it actually tries to connect the classic Sonic era with the modern Sonic era. And I think it really does so beautifully if you ignore all the fucking inconsistencies. This is an excellent opportunity for characters like Knuckles to actually have a fleshed out character development throughout a story with a thorough and meaningful impact on the characters around Knuckles as well as the world that Knuckles and Sonic lives in. Do you see all of the patterns and textures fleshed out in this world before you? Some of those are pictures the development team took while they visited Guatemala. You can't tell me that you flew all the way from Japan to Guatemala to take pictures and then to come back not to finish a fucking coherent and functional storyline around that environment. Actually, the big thing that I don't like about this game is that it's a fucking shitty attempt at cultural appropriation of indigenous cultures of the global south in order to make a fucking storyline where the indigenous people actually go to fucking war. I have no problem with indigenous people being in video games or indigenous-inspired characters being represented in video games, but this is shitty representation. Not to mention, this is really shitty story writing. Am I supposed to believe that the Knuckles tribe, as a civilization, as a society, has been planning to overthrow a neighboring temple? A neighboring temple with innocent Chao? Are you kidding me right now? And what is all this for, anyway? To gain power? I'm sorry, that's more of like a Western imperialist kind of thing, rather than indigeneity kind of thing. Honestly, none of this would bother me if it weren't for the statement that Knuckles makes at the end of his story.
I'll probably be on this floating island forever. Guarding the Master Emerald again. I may not know the whole story behind this, but perhaps it's better that way. I'm at peace once more.
You know what? That's fine. That's why we're getting a sequel, right? As I've said at the beginning of this video, people often point to this game being the best Sonic game ever made, or the best Sonic game from the era of the Sega Dreamcast. People have even went as far as to say that this game is the last good Sonic game. I wouldn't say this is the last good Sonic game, I would say this is the last Sonic game where they almost kinda gave a shit. There's something really admirable about a story that opens with Sonic being arrested by the military, and then Sonic making a big breakout in the middle of that. My favorite part of the game is where you enter the prison just to be able to break Sonic out of prison. That's just so fucking based. And as you break Sonic out of prison, you learn more about the backstory of Shadow the Hedgehog. Who is Shadow the Hedgehog?
Hey, that's... That blue hedgehog again, of all places. I found you, faker. Faker? I think you're the fake hedgehog around here. You're comparing yourself to me? Huh? You're not even good enough to be
I'll make you eat those words.
There's no time to play games. You won't even get the chance.
Yeah, the voice acting got worse, and that's primarily because they were going based off the lip sync of the Japanese dub. Then they blow up Prison Island, and then they blow up the moon, and then they blow up the World Trade... Oh shit, that was the same year, huh? Oh, fuck. This is the first Sonic game, by the way, where you could play as the bad guys, which is pretty based. Look, lesbian inclusion! Knuckles, as a side character, is tasked with finding the pieces of the Master Emerald again, and he does so in a very shitty way. I mean, really? Because we don't get any more information about what we learned in the previous game regarding the Master Emerald or anything. I mean, you mean to tell me that you can fit this giant-ass gem in your fucking pocket? For those watching at home, that's not a Chaos Emerald. Listen, I've had plenty of fun with this game, and I'm even willing to sit through the mech stages, but this game isn't anywhere near as fun or good as the first Sonic Adventure game. And unfortunately, as much as I hate to say it, the trend does remain consistent. The games get shittier and shittier with each passing title. Fuck. Am I able to do this? Can I do this? I can't believe I forgot this I was going to do. I just now forgot. We're just gonna have to be extremely careful. We're gonna have to blend all of the fucking, like, well, you'll see in a second. This would have been easier if I had done this earlier. Yes, perfect. Damn it, okay. Gotta do this little bit right here. It's really important that, like, not only that you, like, you know, try to, like, you know, do everything consistently on layers, but, like, it's also really important that you keep things consistent as to what layer is on what, and to make sure that you can plan ahead of time if you can, like, you know, work with that layer later on. So that's why, like, you know, it's important to identify these before you go to the top layer and then merge down, and then you got another pair of hands, you know. It's just like one of those things. I hope you don't think you're going to be subscribing to me because I make Sonic content or anything. Yay, 3 pairs of hands. Okay, now we can do this. We have an AK-47. The death of the Sega Dreamcast would symbolize the beginning of Sonic's midlife crisis. The death of the Sega Dreamcast can only be partially accredited to the release of Sony's PlayStation 2. The Sega Dreamcast, with its online capabilities, was very ahead of its time, but it could not compete with the capability of the DVD player in the PlayStation 2. Not to mention its extensive library that spanned until the lifetime of the PlayStation 4. To even insinuate that the Dreamcast was absolutely murdered by the PlayStation 2, the best-selling console in history, even that notion is an understatement. However, the death of the Dreamcast is absolutely Sega's own damn fault. Sega, since the inception of the Sega Genesis, the Sega CD, the Sega 32X, and the Sega Saturn, have made systematically bad decisions on financing each of these consoles. While the release of the Dreamcast was absolutely ambitious for its time, especially with its very unique library, akin to no other video game console in history, with the consistent mismanagement that Sega has partaken in, it has led to their eventual downfall. Many people have speculated as to whether or not there's going to be a sequel to the Sega Dreamcast. There absolutely will never be a sequel to the Sega Dreamcast. The Sega Dreamcast is not only a product of its time, but a large number of would-be Sega Dreamcast titles would be shipped to the Xbox under Microsoft. Some of these games include Shenmue 2, Jet Set Radio Future, Halo, Fable, Half-Life, the Otogi series. I mean, holy shit. These would be really good titles if they were on the Dreamcast. But then again, the Xbox is a very powerful system, and it absolutely surpasses the Sega Dreamcast on a technological level. To be fair, the Sega Dreamcast did get Shenmue 2, but only in Japan and Europe. Furthermore, what this meant was that Sonic the Hedgehog as an IP, an intellectual property, would be owned by Nintendo. Yes, Sega's own financial and economic rival bought Sega's mascot. What next? It's very possible that this could be some cruel prank that God is pulling on us all. In addition, many people would say that Sonic being owned by Nintendo as an IP would be a good thing, so that Sonic can remain afloat. I hearken to disagree with this notion. Not every Sonic game that came out after Sonic Adventure 2 was awful. In fact, the first game that came out right after Sonic Adventure 2 was pretty damn good, albeit lazy and padded out. Sonic Heroes would eventually be known as the game where you could play 3 Sonic characters at a time in 4 different teams, which was pretty impressive because we saw the resurrection of not only Shadow the Hedgehog, but also the characters within Knuckles Chaotix minus Mighty. When playing this game, you'll notice no references to Sonic Adventure 1. However, Shadow the Hedgehog being in Sonic Adventure 2, having just died at the end of Sonic Adventure 2, makes a comeback, but it's very questionable as to whether or not he's the real Shadow. Oh, and for the next game, Shadow joins the National Rifle Association. Listen, under no pretext should arms and ammunition be surrendered. Any attempt to disarm the workers must be frustrated by force if necessary. But this is not it. There are 2 general theories to this video. One theory is that no one wanted this game, and yet we got it anyway. The other theory is that Yuji Naka decided to make this game after getting a bunch of fucking letters saying that Sonic should have a gun. Here's the thing. Regardless of that fact, we were given this game, and we fucking suffered as a result of it. There's some really stinky bullshit when there is a game that promotes the use of firearms in a fucking video game made for kids. I think it's pretty cute that when this game was announced it was going to be rated T, but then the ESRB rating system came out with an E10 rating just in time for this game's release. So, very convenient, and I'm sure that Sega had to make a bunch of amendments to the game in terms of padding out the blood and gore and violence and shit like that, but let's be real here, this is a really fucking weird game. On a fundamental level, and remember, this is a Sonic game, what is the difference between the footage that you're seeing here and this?
some fun when Snubby Gun plays Private Eye, and you can have the same kind of fun with Mattel's Tommy Burst detective set. The Tommy Burst has automatic bolt action.
Oh yeah, kids are real weak these days with their plushy toys and whatnot. Let's go out in the backyard and have a cigarette. What, dare? Nah, not our kids. That's for another set of kids entirely. Listen, I'm not against the use of firearms or the ownership of firearms, and I'm especially not saying that kids can't play games with firearms in them. But this was a god-awful, embarrassing attempt to cash in on Gears of War, Halo, and Call of Duty at the time that was really popular. Fuck this game.
In this world where life is strong, in this world.
Please, for the love of fucking piss Christ, just don't go in the comment section and remind me how bad this game is. I know exactly how garbage this fucking game is. That being said, I don't have a deep interpersonal relationship or connection with this game, and that's because I never bought a 360 growing up, and I did not regret not buying a 360. Holy shit, this game is awful. I did, however, get a chance to play the game one time when I was at a friend's house who happened to have a copy that didn't belong to him. So I popped that baby inside of his Xbox 360. I play the opening cutscene. The opening cutscene takes forever. Then we step into the overworld to find out that you have to buy Sonic's shoes. You know, the light shoes, in order to light dash across the Trail of Rings. Holy shit. And then you start the first level. And this level is so poorly programmed that immediately when you get a game over, you start from the very beginning. Yeah, so, listen, you can tell that my attitude towards Sonic the Hedgehog is getting less and less enthusiastic with each passing title, and I'm just gonna remind you, it's gonna get worse from this point forward. And you know what, yeah, I know, Shadow the Hedgehog, all that, whatever, I don't give a fuck. This is hilarious to me. I mean, like, I hope you're not taking this fucking video seriously at all, because, like, I'm gonna be fucking making this into whatever I want it to be, baby. It's gonna be my own, like, spin, like, quite literally, my own spin. Sonic is not even really gonna help happen anymore. Like, I'm just being real with y'all. Like, let's move this one over here. Let's move this one over here. These look fine. There's something wrong with this one. Okay, that seems to work now. Okay, I think I know what happened. Alright, that makes sense. So I think this one needed to be a top layer because this one's on top of all the other ones. Wait, you know what? Hold on. This one should be on top. You want to see, like, this guy's gun on top. Trying to make Tails hold guns is interesting. Is it this? They probably went through this process, like, when making Shadow the Hedgehog. That's probably what ended up happening, right? Lightly move this over here. And now we can just bring this back, and then maybe even just put it up front where it belongs. I'm trying to get up here. Yeah. And actually, we could probably do one last thing overall, and that is to finally flatten it and press it into, like, some real good, like, saturated, like, you know, maybe a little bit extra contrast, maybe some light, maybe, we'll see. Wow, this is kind of grim, not gonna lie. An ode to the fans. You know what? Here, I have an idea. And then we're gonna lower this the fuck down in opacity, occupancy, what we're gonna say, I don't know. Flatten it. And then we will contrast it a bit. Yeah, I like that. I think we finally got it. I think we finally, like, nailed the coffin in. Made a real rich piece of work. There was one specific time when Sonic X made me cry. I was genuinely tearing up to the scene alone. I witnessed Tails develop a close companion with Cosmo over the course of the second season of Sonic X. I love this relationship, I love this dynamic, because there was never any implication that they were in a romantic relationship, but they were in a very strong, close companion, platonic relationship. This scene where Tails kills Cosmo is it's the best demonstration of how platonic relationships mean so much to people, and how platonic relationships mean so much to me. How people's friendships can last forever. And then they fucking fucked it up with this shit! Please forgive me if my tone throughout the rest of this video is extremely emotional, but that's what this means to me. It means a lot to me. This was my childhood, when I was going through some of the most dramatic moments in my life. I don't need to go deep into my life story, but I will definitely say that Sonic the Hedgehog has gotten me through some of the hard times in my life. When the outside world was cruel and unforgiving, I turned to Sonic. There was a fascinating world of imagination that kept me captivated, hoping for more answers, hoping for more ways to explore this world in a way that is genuine and meaningful. My general attitude towards the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise in this era can be best described as a cheapo-ass cash grab. And listen, not every Sonic game from this era is really all that bad either. Some of them are quite good. However, they don't have the same lasting impact as the first Sonic games to be released within the first decade. For example, I really liked Sonic Colors, but the story? Honestly, utterly meaningless. I mean, the concept is pretty cool, but this doesn't mean anything when there's no character development, not just for Sonic and Tails, but also the MacGuffins in the game, which are the Wisp. Because the Wisp in this game make a comeback 2 games later. So it's largely inconsistent that these Wisp, or rather aliens if you will, are rather homogeneous to these planets alone. I can give credit where credit is due and say Sonic Generations reignited my interest in the Sonic franchise, even getting me to read the comics at one point. But given that this is a quote-unquote greatest hits of the Sonic franchise in terms of levels and bosses, it just feels like they're spoon-feeding me this perfect Chaos boss fight instead of addressing the questions I have asked earlier, which is related to Perfect Chaos. Then they took several steps backwards and released Sonic Lost World, which by the way, this looks nothing like the original in Sonic Adventure, not to mention the artificial placement of the Wisp in this game. You know what? Fuck y'all. I was hopefully optimistic about Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. I was even willing to give the TV show a chance, and yeah, I will say the TV show's pretty good. I was checking out the concept art for Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, and you know what? I can't blame the development team for trying something new. I think that's actually quite admirable. I honestly gave Sonic Boom way too much fucking agency because I was willing to divorce my previous standards for the previous Sonic games just for this one, and it still let me down. And then this shit happens. I had only just recently started playing Sonic Mania, and I love it. It is fantastic. Oh my god, you have no idea. Just the sheer fact alone that Sonic fans worked on this. People who have actually participated in the development of not only more enhanced versions of previous Sonic titles, but also their own Sonic games. And now Sega is willing to give the funds to Sonic fans to create their own game. That's so amazing! Oh my god, it's just like we got a miracle from the sun. They're gonna fuck it up, aren't they?
this alone. Even though I am strong, need something more than me, someone to push me to victory. Let's see what we can do together, me and you. Can't be afraid to try. Kiss your fears goodbye. No.
So something's a little fishy. Can you smell the new smell tumbling through the air? I can, lad. It's coming from over there, over the hills, down the valley. There's a new building there, right in my hometown of Burbank, California. Sega doesn't care. Nintendo says it's safe. Why not bury this game along with those companies there? Yes, this is me. This is way before I came out as a trans woman. You probably wouldn't believe me if I said that Sega of America was directly across the street from Town Hall of Burbank, California, my hometown where I was born and raised. You probably wouldn't believe me if I told you the people who worked on the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog would own a building that is now owned by Cartoon Network. That Toys R Us that I went to in 1999 to witness Sonic Adventure for the very first time in my entire life is now a home goods store. Burbank means more to me than just being my hometown. It's literally rooted in who I am as a person. Burbank was literally the melting pot of not just media, but also a really rich music scene. In fact, Burbank is more widely known for some of the things that Hollywood is more widely acclaimed for, including having major studios including Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, Disney. Even fucking Warner Brothers is from there. Burbank is also known for very small mom and pop stores, and as a result, every time a major chain store opens up in Burbank, mom and pop stores are the first to financially suffer as a result of it. And as a result, like every major city that would fall victim to the likes of Walmart and Target, Burbank would experience what is called gentrification. As a result, marginalized people within these countercultures would be displaced and ultimately unable to live there. I know, because I don't live there anymore. Yeah, something's really fishy here. Now, I'm not gonna make the claim that Sonic Forces or Sega or Sonic the Hedgehog is the reason why I don't live in Burbank anymore. That's not my claim at all. Gentrification is a subject in its own that is an intersection of oppression under the capitalist system. That's going to take way more analysis than just saying there's one root cause to every single problem. And that's why capitalism is an understanding of multiple problems under an economic and social framework. Rather, an unjustified framework. Sonic the Hedgehog is not the root of all evil in this case. However, this fucking game, is a fuck you to my struggle. I don't buy this storyline at all. And let me tell you, I'm not against revolution. At the same time, however, this storyline just... oh my god. From the very beginning, this game plays with your goddamn heartstrings. And you can already tell that they're including other characters from other parts of the franchise with no real relevance to the main plot whatsoever. They're just there to be there. They're there to be recognizable. Never mind that these characters were in previous Sonic titles and played far more superior and more important plot-driven roles than this. As you can see, Sonic is getting his ass beat very clearly as bright as day. Do you see Tails back there watching Sonic potentially die? The way this story is written is as if Tails is to be traumatized from this event. It is implied that Tails has, quote, lost it, and now you can be in the adventure with your own Sonic OC.
I don't know.
Would you try for me, brave man?
Right, yes ma'am!
The part where Tails quote-unquote loses it, it's actually a mistranslation of Tails actually getting geographically lost. Look, people processing their trauma differently than others is very valid, and should not be questioned. But this, as a plot device, has never been touched again, because hey look, it's Sonic from another dimension! Or rather, classic Sonic in our world, you know, the you and me world, you know, breaking the fourth wall. Breaking that fourth wall so bad just to drive up sales of two Sonic games, one produced by the fans and the other produced by your in-house company. Holy shit, for a plotline that specifically involves resistance. I mean, I'm not a Star Wars fan, but even Star Wars does the resistance part better than this fucking game does. Doing quote-unquote resistance in the framework of gentrification, especially in places like Los Angeles, where not only Burbank is from, especially with the antagonistic gentrifying framework of renovating places to move in wealthy people and driving those poor people out through police violence. The wild illusion that Sonic the Hedgehog being a resistance to the mainstream or the status quo is now broken for good. Because if we're going to have Dr. Robotnik be a dictatorial plot device, a plot device that is to be centered around resisting that dictatorial power, then that storyline of Dr. Robotnik being a dictator needs to have some logical credibility behind it. You can't just make your villain bad just because he's bad. You need to have at least a semblance of reasoning and motive behind it that is consistent through all of the Sonic timeline. And I'm going to make a controversial statement right here. Just saying that he wants to dominate the world isn't nuanced enough. This is not an attack on the Sonic fanbase, but I feel that as a fanbase, we set the bar way too low sometimes. The common theory of radical politics within resisting imperialism, fascism, authoritarianism, etc. needs to be embedded in the framework and understanding of class analysis. You don't just resist something because it's big and bad and it has a bunch of glowy red things on it. You don't just resist it because it is known as the bad guy. Actually, in many cases, those aforementioned authoritarian, fascist, and imperialist factions will very often scapegoat marginalized people groups as an attempt to redirect people's anger to a very systemic problem. In this game, Dr. Robotnik does not try to propagate his legitimacy in power. He only enforces it through his own might. When the state maintains control over its own people, it'll try to legitimize its own power to get people to not resist against the state. And as a result, the state chooses not to take accountability for the violence and unjust hierarchical class structures that it places on the people through military intervention and violent imposition. Dr. Robotnik, while he is known as the dictator in this game, his only nuance is that he's just the bad guy. I am not implying that Dr. Robotnik is the good guy, but I am saying that this plotline of resistance is very much an emotionally driven story. And lacing it with Sonic Mania, it is a very manipulative but profitable tactic on behalf of Sega and Nintendo.
Don't criticize. I'm just living by my own feelings, and I won't give in, won't compromise, 'cause I only have to stay fast on the road. I don't know why I can't leave, though it might be tough, but I ain't out of control, just living by my word. Don't ask me why, I don't need a reason. I've got my way, my own way. Doesn't matter now what happens, I will never give up the fight, long as the voice inside drives me to run and fight. It doesn't matter who is wrong and who is right.
I hope that it's been clear throughout this entire video that I am not blaming the fanbase for any of what I have been complaining about in terms of the Sonic franchise throughout this entire 30-year length. I think to scapegoat the entire Sonic fanbase for the downfall of Sonic Adventure as a franchise is not only a failure to address the problems within Sega and Sonic Team and Nintendo, but it is also a really harmful thing to do towards the Sonic fanbase as a whole. I say this at the risk of getting harassed online and also other Sonic fans getting harassed online along with me. But there's this growing stereotype that all Sonic fans are just autistic, loony, crazy people or something like that, and that's extremely harmful, and again, not addressing the root problem that is the downfall of Sega's financial problems. I've heard people say that we failed the Dreamcast because not enough of us had bought the Dreamcast. That's the biggest load of bullshit of all. Sega milked the Sonic franchise like a goddamn cash cow, like a perverted cash crop. Sega themselves, through piss-poor leadership and division within their own company, has led to the downfall and ultimately the death of Sonic the Hedgehog. But this isn't the end of Sonic the Hedgehog, folks. That's not the end of the story.
Oh boy.
Wait, who is this blue hedgehog? I thought we were playing more Doom.
Alright, why would we need a tutorial?
Do you know how to jump? Do you know how to run?
I think the philosopher Pierre-Joseph Proudhon poses a really interesting question. If I were to ask to answer the following question, what is slavery, and I should answer in one word, it is murder, my meaning would be understood at once. No extended argument would be required to show that the power to remove a man's mind, will, and personality is the power of life and death, and that it makes a man a slave. Why then, to this other question, what is property, may I not likewise answer, it is robbery, without the certainty of being misunderstood, the second proposition being no other than the transformation of the first? There's a common phrase that tends to act as the answer to this problem, and that is, property is theft. Even if you think that my gripe with the misuse of the Knuckles tribe in Sonic Adventure and the rest of the series, and maybe you don't think it should be taken seriously, well, must I ask you, why then do you have other gripes related to the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise? Why do you have other gripes related to any other franchise for that matter? Why do you even have opinions to begin with? I remember in middle school having a binder full of ideas for levels and character set plots and all that shit that would go into what would probably be in Sonic Adventure 3. Yes, I was that kid. But you know what? I don't want Sonic Adventure 3 anymore. It's not gonna happen, and it will never happen. And even if Sega decides to announce the release of a Sonic Adventure 3, I'm gonna protest against it. Alright bitches, it's 2021, let's see what the fuck you got now. Wow, an orchestra? Well, I mean, it's not like that hasn't been done by other high school bands. Crush 40 is back yet again with a big old dance party like none ever before. So wait, there's a game with Sonic in a costume animated in the game to be able to be a playable character, but it's not actually Sonic, it's a Sonic mascot. What? You're also playing as Sonic's mascot in a fucking hospital, and he's your boss? And he fucking... What the hell is going on here? Now you're also able to play one of the worst Sonic games of all time. And also one of the worst fighting games of all time. And this fucking shit... Oh wait, you know, hold on. This doesn't belong here. This is from earlier in the video. I'll back in even better than before. What? This is like the same game, right? Like... This is the exact same game. Join Sonic... And then, what am I supposed to expect here? Like, is this a remake or is this a port? I can't tell. Are they like, I mean, what was wrong with the last one? You get a toy, 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 you get a toy. Yo, my man, Roger Craig Smith, just please, you gotta give me something here. Just gotta give me something to work with. Another Sonic compilation. Great. Now you can play these Sonic games on Luna. I didn't know Luna Oi had her own game console. Sonic on mobile, yeah. Now you can search for the One Piece on your phone using Sonic characters. Can I play this on video cassette? Oh no, that sure don't look good none, I'll tell you what. Hey, just a random question, why does Sonic need a car? New TV show, okay. We've got new toys, kiddies, just for the kitlins, just for the babies and the dollies. Oh, and this little thing teased at the very end of the whole Sonic Central livestream? I'm just gonna be honest with you. It doesn't give me any information to go based on, right? So, how do I know that even if this is a good game, they're not gonna repeat any of the same mistakes that they've made in the past regards to Sonic the Hedgehog? Even if this is my wildest fantasy, I can't trust that they're gonna keep the same level of consistency and the same level of respect for their own intellectual property. Fuck Sega and fuck Nintendo. In my opinion, the Sonic fans deserve respect, and I primarily mean that for Sonic fans from Sega themselves. I've made several nods to Sammy Classic Sonic, but I don't do so out of hate, but out of love. I love people who are enthusiastic about their passion, and that's something that should never die, ever. Because the people who are the most passionate about Sonic the Hedgehog are Sonic fans, not people who own Sonic the Hedgehog as an intellectual property. Does Sega do good things sometimes with Sonic the Hedgehog? Absolutely. But there shouldn't be fucking cease and desist letters sent out to fans who are doing independent projects in the name of Sonic the Hedgehog itself. People will always make content in the name of Sonic the Hedgehog as long as there is a driving passion for Sonic the Hedgehog. I wholeheartedly disagree to the argument that Sonic the Hedgehog is a kid's property, therefore it is not to be taken seriously in story development. That is the worst excuse for anything ever. Just because it is advertising towards kids doesn't make it worthless. If anything, it should be handled with even more care. The number of Flash animations, fanfictions, ROM hacks, comics, seriously, there's a whole wealth of Sonic content that is not licensed by Sega or Sonic Team or Nintendo, and that's a good thing. Sega, Nintendo, and Sonic Team do not deserve Sonic as an intellectual property. We do. We deserve it expropriated to the masses. My friends, we write the canon. After today.
Let's get it on.